The Bengals fired some of their top assistants, including defensive coordinator Anarumo, to start their offseason, and I think they have a clear advantage that no other team in the NFL has entering this hiring cycle, and in this video, I'll explain why they set themselves up for a great opportunity. Hi again, Bengals fans. John Sheeran of A2C Sports Cincinnati here, and some of you didn't think it would happen, but the Bengals did in fact fire a handful of coaches on Black Monday. You had defensive coordinator Anarumo, offensive line coach Frank Pollock, defensive line coach Marion Hobby, and linebackers coach James Betcher were all relieved of their duties. The Bengals need assistants at each one of those spots heading into the 2025 offseason. Now, I don't need to explain what the biggest vacancy here is. Obviously, it's important who's the offensive line coach, and we can have a separate conversation about that in a separate video. But for this one, I want to really focus on the defensive coordinator spot because Anarumo, just a couple years ago, he could have been a head coach for an NFL team. He got really close to taking the Arizona Cardinals job before they hired Jonathan Gannon in the 2023 offseason. The NFL has always revered how Anarumo was able to get this Bengals defense to be able to stop the likes of Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and compete in these big games. For him to go to being acclaimed like that to now being out of a job, and not because he's taking a promotion, that's just life in the NFL. It can come at you really quick. And even though I came on this channel about a month ago and said that the Bengals need to fire Anarumo, I still recognize that he is a quality coach and he does belong on some defensive staff somewhere in the NFL. Hell, I think the Chiefs or the Bills would love to have him on their team just so that their quarterbacks don't have to face them in the playoffs again. But it is clear why the Bengals did move on now, right? This has been a tough year for the defense as a whole because of Anarumo's just tendency to latch on to these aging veterans and not give the young players enough chances to develop and actually make a name for themselves and actually maybe improve the defense. We saw how much better it got once Jordan Battle was playing over Von Bell. We saw how much better the pass rush was once Sam Hubbard was off the field, unfortunately, due to injury circumstances, and it kind of forced Anarumo's hand, but Joseph Asai and Myles Murphy actually provided a boost in these final 5 weeks and made the defense competent because it wasn't just one pass rusher and Trey Hendrickson doing all the dirty work. This has been a thing for years. Anarumo's always had an attachment to his veterans. It's why the defense was so good in 2021 and 2022, because he could just rely on 11 vets who were proven in the NFL. And then you have to talk about 8 top 100 draft picks since 2022 given to Anarumo to develop on that side of the ball. You're talking about the likes of Dax Hill, Cam Taylor-Britt, Zach Carter, who's no longer on the team, Jordan Battle, DJ Turner, Myles Murphy. Like, how many of those guys would you consider to be building blocks for this defense? Maybe only a couple? It's not a good enough hit rate, and it's a damning indictment on Anarumo and his staff for developing these guys and putting them in positions to succeed. You can just look at the 2 first-round picks from that group, and it's a bad look for Anarumo. It took 2 years for him to find out how to use Dax Hill correctly at cornerback, and just when he started to look good, he suffered a torn ACL, but still, that's 2 years just down the drain of Anarumo not knowing what to do with this guy that the front office clearly loved. And Myles Murphy, again, he had 0 sacks this year in his second season where he played more than 11 games. Like, that's just unacceptable from a development standpoint. The fact that he just didn't get enough opportunities because Sam Hubbard was here and they couldn't institute him more often in the rotation, it's inexcusable. These are the reasons why Anarumo was ultimately fired. The defense could not be this bad and have this much still to figure out when Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins are having the seasons that they had. You cannot waste another MVP season from your quarterback and your receiver winning the freaking Triple Crown and expect nothing to happen. And that is exactly why this is the perfect time to look for a new defensive coordinator, to look for a new voice now that the old voice had gotten stale, because 6 years is a long time for any defensive coordinator to stay in one spot. But even so, 6 years ago, Anarumo was so far from the first choice of Zach Taylor's first defensive coordinator. Even though the two worked together in Miami, had some history together, they interviewed several other candidates for the position, and it took them until nearly the scouting combine in late February to make that hire official. It took so long for the second most important coach of this coaching staff to find his way to Cincinnati. That is not going to happen this time around, because not only do you now have a head start on every other team that would be looking to hire a defensive coordinator because they just fired their head coaches and it's going to take a while for them to rebuild their staff, you have an ideal situation for a defensive coordinator looking to make a name for himself and maybe, just maybe, become a head coach either again or for the first time. Because if the expectation here is that so long as your defense ranks 20th or better in the NFL, that Joe Burrow is going to take you to the playoffs and maybe a Super Bowl, I think everyone who's qualified for that position will want to pounce on that opportunity. It cannot be understated how important it is for Zach Taylor and the Bengals to get this hire right. So it's a really, really good thing that they're going to have a lot of good candidates to choose from.